It was a celebration yesterday of America's independence. They had the barbecue, the concert, the fireworks, the whole thing. Returning from a weekend at Camp David, President Joe Biden addressed military members in the crowd we called the protectors of democracy.
You are the sinew, the backbone, the reality of why we're who we are. Unbreaking, unbending. Throughout our history, remind us that democracy is never guaranteed. Every generation must fight to maintain it. We must always cherish it, defend it, and strengthen it.
In the evening, the president switched into the role of MC to introduce the night's musical act, where he was met with some enthusiasm for his re-election campaign.
Hey, buddy. Welcome to your house, the White House. We're just renting. Think how music can change moods, music can make us feel better. It's just incredible. And I thought we had some great entertainment here tonight.
Yeah.
Well, now you're making music to my ears.
Biden 2024, someone yelled there from the crowd at the White House yesterday after President Biden's leading Republican challenger Donald Trump. Well, he didn't hit the campaign trail on the 4th. The former president spent the holiday on social media, railing against the Justice Department, his other perceived enemies, in addition to posting this photo of his head superimposed on George Washington's body and sharing a post that included the words F Joe Biden, which we've blurred out here. Trump called for special counsel Jack Smith to be, quote, defunded. He also said Smith should be, quote, put out to rest before Democrats steal another election. Donald Trump was one of the only Republican candidates actually not out campaigning yesterday. Ron DeSantis, Doug Burgum, Tim Scott, Will Hurd all made competing appearances at the same Independence Day parade in Merrimack, New Hampshire. Former President Mike Pence went to Iowa, where he took part in a parade in Urbandale, where he pitched himself as a better option to Donald Trump.
The people of Iowa, the people of America are ready for a change. I think different times call for different leadership in the Republican Party and in America. And we're just absolutely determined to offer our brand of leadership, common sense, conservative values, with an emphasis on civility and respect for the people of this state.
So, Claire, pretty conventional 4th of July campaigning for most of the Republican candidates. Donald Trump posting on social media, making himself into George Washington. The obvious distinction there, one of many, is that George Washington was a soldier. Donald Trump chose not to be one. But what does it say to you about the state of this Republican primary that Donald Trump thinks, I can just stay home, I can sit at my golf club and post on social media, and that works for me. I don't even have to go out and do an event. I don't even have to go out and press the flesh and do the things that other people feel like they need to do to get elected in Iowa and New Hampshire.
Well, in my opinion, one of the saddest things that's happened in modern politics is the fact that so many candidates don't think it's important to go out and do what we call in politics retail, which is shaking hands, looking people in the eye, talking to them, answering their questions. That's going away. And obviously for Donald Trump, he is much more comfortable at his very luxurious golf club with his thumbs on a device, tweeting obscenities about the sitting president. It's interesting to me when I look at the 4 pictures that are on the screen right now. I guarantee you that most of America that is looking at this screen right now goes, well, who are those other 2 guys? And that's the other thing that's interesting about this. We have a bunch of candidates that really have absolutely no name recognition. And they're not going to get name recognition by marching in a small 4th of July parade in New Hampshire. That's not going to do it. They're going to have to raise big money in order for anybody to go, well, who is that? Other than say, who is that? So right now, Donald Trump's in a commanding position. And think about that, Republican Party. You've got a guy who says F Biden on the 4th of July, and he's your man. It is unbelievable.
So many of those second-tier Republican candidates have issues whether or not they'll even qualify for the first debate, which is just a month or so away. There's certain thresholds they've got to hit. It's unclear even like right now, even Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, though likely will get in. It's not a sure thing. Chris Christie as well. So, Caddy, let's talk about the Trump strategy here. Our friends at Axios did some reporting actually noting just how few events he's actually had since becoming a declared candidate, despite his bluster about his energy and his robust schedule. That's actually not the case. But the Trump team has made a calculation. I mean, some of this might be Trump's laziness, but beyond that, they've made a calculation. Well, we don't need to do this. We don't need to be out there. We can parachute in, have a big event, have a big rally. We'll dominate the headlines for days. He can sit on Truth Social wishing a happy 4th of July to the haters and the losers out there. He might not even participate in that first debate because he's got such a big lead and he doesn't want to elevate the rest. Do you see that strategy backfiring, or is that actually the right way to do it for someone like him?
At the moment, there's no evidence that it's backfiring, right? In poll after poll, his lead is increasing, not decreasing. So the strategy of doing the occasional big rally and getting a ton of media attention, because whatever he does, whether it's being indicted, whether it's tweeting what he tweets or sending out social media posts on the 4th of July, we talk about it. And he gets an enormous amount of attention just through doing that. So if I was his campaign, I'd be saying carry on doing what you're doing. I mean, I guess the only thing to remember is that in December of 2007, Barack Obama was 20 points behind Hillary Clinton, and there is still time potentially for one of these candidates to break through. One assumes it would have to be Ron DeSantis because he's the only one who has the money and some polling and has been consistently second in the polls. So I suppose there is still time for him to break through. But I don't see any reason that the Trump campaign would trade strategies, given that what they're doing is working so well for them at the moment.
Please welcome United States Senator Lindsey Graham.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, you can make mistakes on occasion. Even Lindsey down here, Senator Lindsey Graham. We love Senator Graham. We're gonna love him. We're gonna love him. I know it's half and half, but when I need some of those liberal votes, he's always there to help me get them. Okay? We got some pretty liberal people, but he's good. He's there. He's there when you need him. He's there when you need him. I'm going to get him straightened up.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, in his home state, booed mercilessly over the weekend by a crowd of Republicans, with Donald Trump there doing very little to defend him, instead goading his supporters into booing Senator Graham even more. Claire, it's almost hard to watch at this point, to a man who just subjects himself again and again and again to this humiliation and to defend Donald Trump, and that's what he gets in return for it. Remember, he went out for a brief moment on January 6th and said, I'm done with Donald Trump, bumps into some people at the airport in Washington who call him traitors, and he immediately flips. He's been on TV in the last few months literally weeping for people to give money to Donald Trump's campaign. And this is what he gets in return. It's, you know the man, you worked alongside him. It's humiliation seems like an understatement.
Yeah, I don't think humiliation is a strong enough word. And everybody needs to keep context here. I mean, this is his hometown.
Yeah.
He lives, I mean, this is a small town. He lives 15 miles away. And this is not, these are supposed to be his people. Now, one thing it does show is I do believe there are probably a lot of people, and I've met these people, who travel around the country just to see Donald Trump. It's a little bit like the Grateful Dead for people who are weird. They go on the road to see Donald Trump. So I would, in Lindsey's defense, there's probably a good chunk of this audience that's not South Carolina. But the humiliation here is not what the crowd did. It's what Donald Trump did. He treated him like he was a piece of dirt under his shoe. And I've got a real shot to Lindsey. Lindsey, it's not working. You cannot put aside your convictions and your character to support this man, it will not work. He knows this guy is trouble for the United States of America, and another place he's split with Trump is over Ukraine. So, Lindsey, find yourself in this moment. Use this as a teaching moment. You need to be Lindsey, not some embarrassing sycophant that has attached yourself like a leech to the side of this man. I would say to the backside of this man. And it is just beyond sad and depressing. And if it wasn't Lindsey's own fault, it's his fault. So I can't feel sorry for him. But he doesn't appear ready or willing or capable of correcting this problem.
It's hard to imagine him leaving Donald Trump at this point. But as you say, that was in Pickens, South Carolina, not far from Lindsey Graham's hometown, in his home state. As Claire says, that should be his crowd. And going on TV and literally weeping for Donald Trump is not even enough there. So why do you sell your soul? It remains one of the great mysteries of our modern politics. Claire, thanks so much. Meredith, you've got some new reporting that shows a top spokesperson for the super PAC supporting Ron DeSantis is raising flags about the Florida governor's ability to overtake Donald Trump in the race for the nomination, calling the DeSantis campaign the clear underdog in a Twitter Spaces event that was recorded on Sunday night.
In national polling, we are way behind. I'll be the first to admit that, okay? I believe in being really blunt and really honest. It's an uphill battle. I don't think it's an unwinnable battle by any stretch, okay? But clearly, Donald Trump is the runaway front runner.
So that's Steve Cortes, Meredith, speaking on behalf of that super PAC that supports Ron DeSantis, not saying anything really that we don't know to be true, which is that he's way behind, and whatever he's done so far to introduce himself to voters hasn't made much of a dent in the support for Donald Trump. So how are they viewing this now? How are they approaching this? They've had a couple of months to introduce him to the country, to present, I guess, a case to make him an alternative to Donald Trump, though not much criticism of Donald Trump himself. What is the path forward here?
Well, Steve Cortes was really stating the obvious, as you said. The DeSantis campaign has been behind Trump by double digits in a lot of these national polls. And even though DeSantis has been out on the campaign trail, he really has just not been able to capture the kind of momentum that people who are not for the Trump candidacy were hoping he would be able to do. And Steve Cortes was pretty blunt in this Twitter Spaces interview. He was talking about Trump being the front runner. He did say that he hoped that the more people get to know DeSantis, get to know his personal story, political story, that hopefully these numbers will change. But overall, he was talking about how how big of an uphill battle this really is going to be for the DeSantis campaign at the moment. And, you know, the DeSantis campaign has talked about how this is a marathon and not a sprint. And I can't emphasize that enough. It definitely is. We still have many, many months until the first nominating contest. But, you know, as Vaughn was talking about there in South Carolina, just the show of force, the amount of enthusiasm the Republican Party has for Donald Trump right now, being able to attract tens of thousands of people to stand out in the hot summer heat to hear him speak. We're just not seeing that from any of the other supporters for the other candidates out on the campaign trail right now.
Key agencies and officials from the Biden administration have been barred from meeting and communicating with social media companies about content on their platforms. A Trump-appointed federal judge sided with Republican attorneys general in a lawsuit alleging the government went too far in encouraging social media companies to address posts they felt could contribute to COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy or upend elections. NBC News reports the ruling said government agencies like the Department of Health and Human Services and the FBI could not talk to social media companies for, quote, the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. The judge's ruling could go beyond speech, undoing more than a decade of work between the federal government and companies to curb criminal activity online. According to a White House official, the Department of Justice is, quote, reviewing the court's injunction and will evaluate its options in this case. This administration has promoted responsible actions to protect public health, safety, and security when confronted by challenges like a deadly pandemic and foreign attacks on our elections. NBC News reached out to Meta, Twitter, and Alphabet for comment. but have not yet heard back. Joining us now, technology policy reporter at the Washington Post, Kat Zakrzewski, and NBC News senior executive editor for national security, David Rohde. Good morning to you both. Kat, I'll start with you. So help us understand exactly now what the federal government cannot do that it previously was doing in terms of its communication with social media companies.
This is an extraordinarily broad injunction that could have major effects on a lot of the communications that were occurring between DOJ, various health agencies around the pandemic, and election misinformation. Now, the judge's injunction does have some carve-outs to allow the government and the companies to continue to talk about criminal activity, about voter suppression, but legal experts I spoke to expect that this will have a major chilling effect on ongoing communications. The order also limits some of the government's communications with academic groups that were studying disinformation on social media, like the Election Integrity Project, which is run by Stanford and the University of Washington.
So, David, there are some carve-outs here. There's like a crime is about to be committed. The government can still reach out to these social media companies. But there's real concern of people I talked to in the last couple of days about, first of all, misinformation on things like COVID or the next pandemic, whenever that might happen. But national security concerns as well with election disinformation and the like. People that you've talked to who study this all the time, what's their level of alarm after this?
They're very concerned. And what's happening is that, look, there were mistakes made by public health officials in the beginning of the pandemic, but there wasn't a vast plot to sort of to trick the American people into taking a vaccine that would harm them. And so you have a kind of talking point, a political talking point, turning into a court ruling. And that's what's so different about this. It's sort of reinforcing, these theories about what the government did and now restricting them. So should FEMA not warn people about a hurricane? I mean, this was a public health emergency. It's sort of a basic thing about the government trying to counter disinformation. And the second thing is I've talked to current government officials who are very concerned about foreign interference or just deep fakes in the 2024 election.
Mike Barnicle, jump in.
Would it be fair to look from a little bit, 50,000 feet down on this ruling and other rulings like it, to make the claim or posit the theory that in a way the Federalist Society, Leonard Leo, and the former president with his judicial appointments have changed the course of the country's legal history and in fact has put a big handprint on the administration today because of these judicial rulings?
I want to say not yet, and that I think there's a good chance the Justice Department will appeal this and the Biden administration will push back. And then we'll have to see again, where does the Supreme Court come down? And the broader trend is an increasingly political court system that's seen as making liberal or conservative rulings. Conservatives have said that the courts have been too liberal for too long, but the kind of hyper partisanship that we see in our politics is definitely infecting the court system. The judge who made this ruling, has made several. He was a Trump appointee, and he's made several other conservative rulings like this. So that's the slow encroachment on the courts and on their credibility, their impartiality. The Supreme Court has, record low approval at this point. So this worries me. I'm a reporter. I try to, as I keep saying on the show, be fair and stick to the facts. And the courts need to do the same. They need to act as umpires, not players on either side of the partisan divide.
Kat, the intersection of politics and tech is so interesting at the moment because I've also had senators on Capitol Hill from both sides saying to me that, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, want to do something about AI, for example, because they could see what it could mean for their own political campaigns. It would just be so easy for them to have pictures and video of them posted saying things they never said. But in this instance, there does seem to be a sort of, and I've heard it before from some conservatives saying that the whole theory of misinformation since 2016 is something that liberals are pushing, that it's against Republican candidates, particularly against Donald Trump. But what is the implication of all of this for 2024? Of this ruling and of this feeling that, that somehow misinformation isn't a real thing, even though we know that it is?
Well, you can't look at this ruling in a vacuum. We're at a moment where Elon Musk now owns Twitter and has taken tremendous steps to unwind the content moderation teams and workforces at that company. Meta, under financial pressure, has made major layoffs that have cut those teams. So really what we've seen since the 2016 election is a buildup of efforts to fact check and otherwise moderate content on these services. We certainly saw that play out in the 2020 election, and in the years since then, we've now seen this gradual unwinding, and this ruling only furthers those efforts.
Technology policy reporter at the Washington Post, Kat Zakrzewski, and NBC News senior executive editor for national security, David Rohde. Thank you both for walking us through this decision. We appreciate it. Coming up, new competition headed to the App Store today. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, is launching its direct Twitter competitor. It's called Threads. NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin has details. Erin?
Hey there, Willie. That's right. The app will be available tomorrow, and it looks like users can link it directly to their Instagram account. It's the latest salvo in the battle between billionaires Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. And get this, they may actually physically fight each other.
It's the battle of the billionaires after Elon Musk recently challenged Mark Zuckerberg to a potential cage match, and Zuckerberg agreed. The two have yet to physically face off, but the source of their dispute, Zuckerberg's company Meta, is now entering the ring to take on Twitter.
I enjoy being doubted.
Announcing the launch of a direct competitor, Threads. The app, which appears to emphasize public conversations, much like Twitter, already showing up in Apple's App Store for users to download on Thursday. Photo previews suggest users will be able to log in using their Instagram account.
Meta is the biggest social media company in the world. They can take this to their users, their existing user base, and leverage that.
The number of users on Instagram worldwide, 2 billion, compared to some 300 million on Twitter. And buzz is building on social media.
This is what it's going to look like. It's really cool because you can actually log in with your Instagram username.
Threads is launching amidst an earthquake at Twitter. Since Elon Musk bought the platform last year, he's changed the verification process, charging $8 for blue check marks, overhauled the layout that determines what tweets users see, and just days ago imposed limits on how many tweets users can read per day. Musk, for his part, is not modulating his controversial takes.
I'll say what I want to say, and if the consequence of that is losing money, so be it.
It's caused many users and advertisers to flee the site, triggering a flock of new challengers scrambling to offer an alternative, like Blue Sky and Mastodon. And new social media platform Spill, aiming to serve diverse communities, was number 4 in the free App Store on Tuesday. But users on all those platforms remain relatively few. And now Meta is entering the fray.
The timing could not be more perfect because everyone's pissed off at Twitter.
Elon Musk has left an opening in the social media landscape, and Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, always likes an opening.
There's concern in the tech world that Meta could collect even more personal data than Twitter, ranging from financial information to your health and fitness. Meta does have a long history of privacy concerns, but an expert I spoke to said if you're already using Facebook or Instagram, the policies will likely be similar. NBC News has reached out to both Meta and Twitter for comment. We've yet to hear back. Willie?
NBC's Erin McLaughlin. Erin, thanks so much. Let's bring in the co-anchor of CNBC's Squawk Box, Andrew Ross Sorkin. Also with us, professor of history at Tulane University, Walter Isaacson. He's working on a biography of Elon Musk. Good morning to you both, guys. Andrew, let me start with you and Threads. What do we think this is going to look like? How popular might it be? And how much is this about Zuckerberg versus Musk, their little planned slap fight aside?
Look, I just think I think that Zuckerberg sees this as an opportunity and an opening. Whether it's going to work or not, unclear. Probably will do well with advertisers, at least initially, insofar as people like to be around things that are brand safe, and they consider Meta and Facebook and the like safer, if you will, than where Twitter is right now. But it's still an open field, and it's unclear. I don't think anybody really knows whether people will really go. For any of these things to work, They need scale. There is a network effect. Walter Isaacson and I have talked about this at great length before. You need to have that network effect. You need everybody going on there. And right now, one of the reasons why Blue Sky and Mastodon and the other apps that you talked about haven't really gained traction is because there's not enough people on them to create that network effect scale.
Walter, I think a lot of people who think Twitter is an absolute mess right now as a user experience, forget the business side of it, would be happy to see some kind of a viable alternative to it. But you are so plugged into the world of Elon Musk, you're working on a biography of him. Does he view Twitter as a mess, or does he think this is going well?
I think he thinks it's going well in terms of bringing new users in, and clearly he's been bold in doing things like putting up video and new tweet decks and things. But his great fear has been that Twitter would be he wants Twitter to be a place where left and right and all sorts of people join together. He wants it to be a town square, a civic site. And his great fear is that social media balkanizes, and that's what you may see happening here when Meta comes into the game, because different people with different political viewpoints can do what they do on cable TV, on talk radio dial, and in the blogosphere, is just go to their own corners. And as Andrew said, what you really want is a place where everybody goes so you can have contention. It's probably not much fun, whether you're left or right, to only be talking to your choir.
Congratulations. I don't know, some people seem to be just doing that these days, Walter. Andrew, talk about the other changes that Elon Musk has been trying to make to Twitter recently. I mean, obviously we had the blue tick, the whole tick verification system earlier, but then this limit on the number of tweets you can use, right, kind of 800 if you aren't. Although why you'd want to do more than 800 tweets, I don't know, during the course of a day.
He's been after the bots since the very beginning. In fact, one of his rationales for buying this company was he wanted to rid the service of bots and rid the service of folks also now increasingly scraping data that they can then use to do generative AI, meaning they're looking at all this data that all of us are writing on Twitter and then using that data and those sentences and that word structure and that information to effectively propel generative AI tools like ChatGPT and the like, and he's trying to end that. And what he did over the weekend was say, look, we're going to try to stop that. One of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to limit how much anybody can see this stuff, because he's not just trying to check this for humans. He's trying to really check the bots and all of these AI programs that are trying to scrape the data. He said he needed to do that almost out of nowhere to surprise people, because if he had done it and told people this is coming next week, that actually those bots and everybody else would have gotten prepared and figured out ways around it.
I think this is an important...
Go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point in the that Andrew just made. In the era of generative AI, the big fuel is data. Now, things like ChatGPT, GPT-4 or Bard from Google, they've trained on data from billions of documents on the internet, but it's not timely. What is the most timely data stream we have of the hive mind of humanity? That's the Twitter, billion tweets per day. And what Musk was trying to do is said, you're not allowed to scrape that data to train your AI systems. And I think that was the main reason he clamped down on the number of tweets that could be scraped or read in any given day.
We are just about a month into hurricane season, and forecasters are already keeping an eye on the tropics. Also watching the weather very closely, a veteran-led humanitarian organization called Team Rubicon. That group is the subject of a new streaming series on the Roku channel. Take a look.
I'm Kevin O'Connor. I work with a team at This Old House that rebuilds old homes. When people run away from disasters,
Hurricane Ian is moving in our direction. This will be a heavy rain event that could impact life and property.
These are the men and women who run towards it. Most of them spent years volunteering to serve their country.
I'm watching this disaster unfold and feel an urge to help.
The damage is astronomical, beyond belief.
Everything's just tore up. And I said, I think I should go down there.
The mission is to help the neediest.
Let's do it.
They call themselves Team Rubicon.
I started calling Marines that I'd served with. We inspired and launched this movement that would become an organization.
Come with us as we help those in need.
Joining us now, the host of the Team Rubicon series you saw there, Kevin O'Connor, along with Team Rubicon CEO Art De La Cruz. Great to see you both. Art, I'm happy to see you. We saw our buddy, our mutual friend Jake Wood in there, co-founder of Team Rubicon. For people who are not familiar with the work you do in the group, give them a sense of how this all started and how it's grown from there.
Yeah, so Jake Wood started this organization in 2010 after the Haiti earthquake, and since that time, we've grown from those 8 initial deployers to a force of over 170,000 registered volunteers, of which over 50% are volunteers. So we use the skills, experience, and education that military veterans have to help people on their worst day after disasters.
And so, Art, it literally goes, in my experience with Team Rubicon, disaster strikes, it hits the news, you guys see some weather coming somewhere, and you rally the troops in a way that was not unlike the work you all did serving overseas.
Yeah, I think that's a really accurate characterization. You know, the reality is, just like the military, our volunteers are training year-round to be ready, you know, when disaster strikes. It's about the preparation, it's about the process, it's about the equipment, and ultimately about the people executing.
Kevin, what impressed you most? You've seen some rebuilding in your time on television and outside of it. What impressed you most as you watch closely and observe the work that Team Rubicon does?
When I deployed to start making the show, every person that I met, you couldn't tell who was a veteran, who was a civilian. Every person I met woke up from a cot in a hot, sweaty gym or a YMCA and was ready to work. They didn't ask who they were helping. They didn't complain about, you know, that the food might have been a little cold that morning. They wanted to get some stuff done. And it's this mentality that you are surrounded by with everyone who shows up there, that they just want to get busy helping their neighbors. And it's very inspiring.
So Kevin, walk us through some of the disasters that you guys responded to you know, for these shows, and how did this differ from the work you're used to doing?
Well, we met Team Rubicon back in 2017 after Hurricane Harvey. They were doing cleanup and rebuild, and that's sort of more of what we do on This Old House, which is sort of how to rebuild houses, make them resilient. What's different here is the immediacy of the response. You know, so literally a storm happens, and they have boots on the ground within 24 hours. And so the things that we did where we were responding to Hurricane Ian, which was a long-term cleanup, but then we also would get the call that a tornado touched down in Selma, Alabama, and we had to be there within a day or so, and immediately start setting up operations so that you could help the homeowners who've been affected, the survivors. And we were doing things like tarping roofs, mucking out houses, cleaning up. It's a ton of hard work, but it's incredibly satisfying things to do.
Let's take another look at a moment from the show. One episode where a Team Rubicon volunteer, in the midst of responding to a natural disaster, makes a surprising discovery.
I'm guessing this butter bar belongs to an Air Force officer.
Yep, Second Louis.
Second Lieutenant.
We went fishing for your dad's cabinet, and we came up with something else altogether.
We thank you guys.
Good to do it.
Never forget it.
We work for hugs.
Mike. Mike Barnacle, you've gotten to know this organization pretty well over the years as well. Jake Wood has been a friend of ours, a guest on this show many times, talking about the work. And it is Haiti and it's Puerto Rico, but a lot of it is at home with hurricanes and tornadoes and the disasters. We've seen Hurricane Sandy, for example, that hit the tri-state area so hard in 2012. They just do awesome work. And on the other side of it, as Art can tell you, is it gave a lot of purpose to a lot of veterans who may have needed it at that time in their lives.
Boy, that's for sure, Willie. That is for sure. And Kevin, the word team itself, could you speak to the word team in terms of whether it's a squad, whether it's a platoon, whether it's a whole company? How many people, how many of the volunteers were drawn to this, to Team Rubicon, because of the need to feel part of a team again?
You know, as I said, the people who show up for this are people who really want to get busy, get their hands dirty, and be involved. And it's nice to be able to write a check to an organization to support them, or to sometimes help spread mulch or what it is. This is an entirely different level of engagement. People are literally deploying to these sites. They're living in tough situations, but they're coming there because they really want to help their fellow citizens. You can feel that mentality that I think comes from the military, but it spreads to the civilians like myself who are there. Everybody sort of pulls together. It doesn't matter what you are in civilian life or military life. Everybody has a job. That's one of the principles of Team Rubicon. Everyone has a job, everyone has a purpose, and you get stuff done. When you're working next to the CEO of the organization, a Navy pilot, a Top Gun instructor, and he and I are putting on Tyvek suits, stripping down wallboard, and pulling out nasty installation, it sends a message that you are here to work, here to help. It doesn't matter who you are in your regular life. Now is a time for community service. And that team building is something that I think it makes everybody feel, it helps you get up in the morning to do the work that we have to do.
What's amazing about this is that obviously you're helping the communities that have been hit by disasters, but talk a little bit more about what this means for the veterans themselves. My husband's a veteran, then he was a war correspondent. I know how hard it can be for people then to kind of readjust and honestly find that same sense of purpose that they had when they were serving in civilian life. And talk a little bit about that and what this does for the veterans themselves.
Yeah, well, we're really fond of saying that, veterans are built to serve, as you saw from your husband. Oftentimes the skills and the experience, the education they have remains untapped. So we like to say, by volunteering with Team Rubicon, you connect with the community that you left, you maintain an identity, and probably most importantly is you have this incredible purpose in helping people after their worst day. In addition, you find that through volunteering, it's a really great, and I like to say selfish act, where individuals who serve find, again, this resilience, this idea that they can be a part of something larger than themselves. So it becomes a really, really powerful act, not just for the communities and the people you're serving, but for the individual themselves. And we think that's what keeps them coming back to continue helping, after these disasters.
As you said, Art, 175,000 registered volunteers with Team Rubicon. 55% of them are military veterans, so you don't have to be a vet to get involved. If somebody's watching this and wants to jump on board, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, TeamRubiconUSA.org. We'd love your support, and we'd love to see you in one of our gray shirts.
It is a great day out there and helps a lot of people. You can watch the entire Team Rubicon series for free right now on Roku TV. Go online, sign up to help out, as Art just said. Kevin O'Connor, Art Dela Cruz, thank you both very much for being here today. We appreciate it.